The private elevator in the Meridian Tower travels from lobby to penthouse in 41 seconds. I know, because I approved the spec sheet. I approved the Italian marble it's lined with, the brushed brass rail, the load rating. I approved everything in this building, down to the door hinges. I watched the floor numbers climb. 30, 35, 40. Somewhere above my head, bass was thumping through 11 inches of engineered concrete. Concrete I paid to pour, which meant the sound system upstairs was violating two separate clauses before I'd even stepped off the elevator. Beside me stood Marcus, my head of building security, 6'4", ex-military police, a man whose resting expression makes people apologize preemptively. He held the elevator's override key. I held a clipboard. On the clipboard, a notice of lease termination, a schedule of documented violations, and a demand to vacate, prepared by my corporate counsel, reviewed twice, airtight. Upstairs, my husband was throwing an engagement party. 80 guests, his new fiancée, my penthouse. Marcus looked at the climbing numbers, then at me. Any special instructions, Miss Chen? Let them finish their toast, I said. I'm not a monster. Then cut the music. 41 seconds. The doors opened. Let me tell you how a man ends up celebrating his engagement in a building owned by the wife he threw away. I'm Sarah, 34. I run Chen Development Group. Commercial real estate, 400 employees, 12 active projects across 3 states. My father started it with a strip mall and a loan he was terrified of. I took it over at 27 when he got sick, and I tripled it. That's not bragging, that's context. You need the number to understand the joke that's coming. Here's the thing about me that made this whole story possible. I don't look like the number. I wear jeans. I own 2 suits and 1 pair of heels, and all 3 live at the office. I drive a pickup because I visit job sites, and job sites eat luxury sedans. I come home with concrete dust on my boots and rebar diagrams in my head. My idea of self-care is a structural walkthrough going well. My holdings sit behind boring names, holding companies, LLCs, a family trust my father built like a bunker. Meridian Tower belongs to one of them. My name appears on nothing a civilian would ever read. This is standard practice in development. It is also, it turns out, excellent marital camouflage. Julian never did the math. In 7 years of marriage, my husband never once did the math. He knew I worked in construction. He knew the company was Dad's thing that I helped run. He saw the boots and the truck and the 60-hour weeks and filed me under blue collar, decent income, no polish. I'd tried to explain the business early on. His eyes would drift by the second sentence. Eventually, I stopped explaining. I want to be honest about that choice. Some of it was exhaustion. Some of it was a quiet, patient curiosity about who exactly I had married. Call it due diligence. It ran 7 years. Julian, meanwhile, was aesthetic. That's the kindest available word. A wine consultant who consulted maybe 6 times a year. Beautiful jackets. Strong opinions about hotel lobbies. He referred to my job at dinner parties as Sarah's little demolition thing, and once, memorably, told his friends I basically drive a forklift, and the table laughed, and I sipped my wine and added a line to the file. The end came on a Tuesday in our apartment. He'd staged it. I know staging when I see it. He stood by the window and delivered a speech I could tell he'd rehearsed in the mirror. He'd outgrown us. He needed a woman with class, elegance, someone who understands the finer things. He needed aesthetics, Sarah, a life that looks like something. Her name was Chloe, an influencer. And here was the part he savored. He'd secured a penthouse, the penthouse, top of the brand new Meridian Tower, $15,000 a month. You wouldn't understand the application process for a building like that, he said, gently, like he was explaining airports to a farmhand. They vet everything. They do. He'd already packed my bags. That detail matters, so sit with it. 7 years, and he'd folded my life into 2 suitcases and a duffel before I got home and set them by the door, tidy like a hotel checkout. My boots were in a separate plastic bag, so they wouldn't get dust on anything. While he talked, I did what I do in every negotiation. I went quiet and I verified. I pulled out my phone and found Chloe's Instagram. It took 4 seconds. 31,000 followers. And there, post after post, going back 6 weeks, was my building. My lobby, tagged. My rooftop amenity deck. A mirror selfie in an elevator I could identify by the brass rail profile. Captioned, "New chapter loading." And then the piece that made the entire architecture of the next month assemble itself in my head in one silent half-second. A story from that morning. Chloe waving a folder, captioned, "He got the penthouse. Meridian, baby." The folder had a logo. Halstead Residential Management, the leasing arm. Halstead Residential is a wholly owned subsidiary of Chen Development Group. I sign its quarterly reports. The deposit Julian had wired, first month, last month, security, $60,000 all in, had landed in a corporate account that rolls up through 2 entities to me. My husband had left me for an influencer and moved her into my asset, and neither of them had ever read a single document carefully enough to notice. I want to describe the restraint honestly, because it was the hardest physical act of this entire story. Everything in me wanted to say it right there. One sentence. "Julian, who do you think built the Meridian?" The sentence sat in my mouth like a lozenge for a full minute while he explained the storage options for my remaining things. But here's what 17 years around contractors teaches you. Never interrupt a man who is pouring his own footings wrong. Correction is expensive. Silence is free, and it compounds. So I swallowed the sentence. I picked up my 2 suitcases and my boots in a bag, and at the door I turned and looked at him, at his beautiful jacket, at his rehearsed, pitying face, and I let exactly one thing slip through. I smirked. He told people about that smirk later, apparently. She smirked like a crazy person. No, Julian, I smirked like a landlord. Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., I was at my desk on the 40th floor of a different building I own. I pulled Julian's lease file, for quality assurance purposes. It was a beautiful document, by which I mean it was a crime scene. To qualify for a $15,000 a month unit, Halstead requires documented income at 3 times rent. Julian, a wine consultant with 6 clients a year, had submitted an application claiming $540,000 in annual consulting income, supported by a letter from an accounting firm whose address I noted with real professional appreciation was a UPS store. He'd also listed his previous residence as owned, not rented. It was rented by me. A falsified lease application, material misrepresentation, grounds for termination on its own from day one, before he'd hung a single piece of art. Now, and this is the part I need you to understand, because it's the difference between revenge and strategy. I didn't reject the application. Rejection was the weak move. Rejection gets you one bad afternoon for Julian and a story he controls forever. Instead, I called my general counsel, Diane, and we had a conversation I'd summarize as follows. The application is approved. The tenant is documented. The tenant is watched. And nothing we do from this point forward deviates 1 inch from how Halstead treats any other tenant. That last part was Diane's drumbeat. Sarah, this only works is it's boring. Every notice standard. Every timeline by the book. The day this looks personal is the day his lawyer has a case. It has to be the most ordinary eviction in company history. So it was ordinary. Beautifully, lethally ordinary. The building manager's weekly reports became my favorite reading. Week 1, tenant in PH1 received 17 furniture deliveries, propped the service door and let his movers use the residence elevator without booking it. Noted, logged, warning issued, standard. Week 2, noise complaints, 2 from the floor below. Logged. Week 3, tenant's partner filmed sponsored content in the common areas, the pool deck, the lobby. Commercial activity prohibited under Clause 14, warning issued, standard. They ignored the warnings. Of course they ignored the warnings. Warnings are for people who read documents. Then, week 5, the gift. The building manager forwarded an event request, denied per policy, for a private engagement celebration, Approximately 80 guests, DJ, catering staff of 12, hired videographer. Amenity spaces max out at 40 with insurance riders. The penthouse itself is capped at 20 visitors. The request was denied in writing. Julian's emailed response, verbatim, now framed in Diane's office. It's a penthouse, not a church. We're having the party. Bill me if you have to. Bill me if you have to. 6 clause violations, pre-announced, in writing with a smiley face. Diane read it and said the most lawyerly sentence I've ever heard. Well, he's cured our notice problem for us. The termination package was drafted that week. Falsified application, unauthorized commercial filming, occupancy violations, noise, service door tampering, and an explicitly denied, explicitly confirmed 80-person commercial event. Zero tolerance termination under the luxury addendum he'd signed without reading, with the deposit forfeited to damages. All we needed was for the party to actually begin. You can't evict someone for a party they haven't thrown yet. So I RSVP'd, in a manner of speaking. Saturday, 9 p.m. The elevator doors opened on the 41st floor, and I stepped into my penthouse for the first time since the ribbon cutting. It was, I'll admit, a great party. 80 people easily, I counted in blocks of 10, old sight habit. A DJ booth against my floor-to-ceiling windows, a champagne tower, catering staff weaving through a crowd of beautiful strangers. Chloe was mid-photo shoot on my terrace, and Julian stood at the center of it all in a white dinner jacket, glowing, holding court, a man at the absolute summit of a mountain he had never once surveyed. He saw me and laughed. I want to be precise about the laugh because it's the emotional core of this entire story. It wasn't cruel, exactly. It was delighted. He thought, you could watch him think it, that his dusty ex-wife had shown up heartbroken to beg or make a scene, and that this was a wonderful gift in front of everyone. He put his hand on his chest. "Sarah! Oh no! Oh, sweetheart!" He turned to his guests. "Everyone, this is my ex. She works in construction." A ripple of laughter. Chloe hurried in from the terrace, phone already up, filming, narrating. "You guys, the ex-wife literally just crashed our engagement." I let her get the shot. Honestly, I wanted it on camera too. Then Marcus stepped out of the elevator behind me with 2 of his officers, and the laughter developed a flat tire. I walked to the DJ booth. The DJ, a professional, looked at me, looked at Marcus, and faded the music down himself. Smart kid. I took the microphone. "Good evening. I'm Sarah Chen, Chief Executive of Chen Development Group. My company built this tower. Through our subsidiary, Halstead Residential, we also manage it, which makes me, in the sense that matters tonight, the landlord." The room did the thing rooms do. 80 conversations dying in a chain reaction, back to front. Julian's face began a journey. Confusion first, the words simply not parsing, like I'd spoken Latin. Then the search for the joke. Then his eyes went to Marcus's uniform, to the Halstead crest on the clipboard, and I watched 7 years of unexamined assumptions come down like a controlled implosion, floor by floor. Almost graceful. Unit PH-1 is in breach of its lease. Tonight's event, 80-plus guests, commercial videography, hired staff, was denied in writing and held anyway. That's violation 6. The first 5 are itemized here, along with a material misrepresentation on the original application. Mr. Ashford's stated income of $540,000 a year. I paused, and I permitted myself one editorial sentence. As his wife of 7 years, I can confirm that number is aspirational. Somebody by the champagne tower snorted, loudly. It's on Chloe's own footage. The lease is terminated effective tonight under the Zero Tolerance Addendum, Section 22, which was initialed JA on every page. The deposit is forfeit against damages and unauthorized commercial use. This gathering is now trespassing on private property. Security will assist everyone to the lobby. The valet has been notified. Please take your coats. I handed Julian the clipboard. His hand took it on autopilot. He was saying my name. "Sarah, Sarah, wait, this is insane. We're married." And there it was, the word he reached for at the bottom of the rubble. Married. Now it mattered. "Was that my little demolition thing?" I asked him, quietly, off mic. "This is the other thing I do." Chloe was still filming. She filmed the guests leaving in a long, silent, mortified river. She filmed Marcus's officers standing by the elevator like polite statues. At some point, she understood that she was documenting her own eviction in vertical video, and the phone came down. Marcus rode down with Julian and Chloe personally, building policy. Terminated tenants get an escort. The lobby cameras, my cameras, recorded the final shot better than any film crew could have. Julian and Chloe on the sidewalk at 10:40 p.m. in evening wear, surrounded by nothing. Their belongings would follow later, packed by a bonded moving service, delivered to storage, per policy, itemized, photographed, immaculate. The Ferrari he'd leased to match the penthouse sat in a garage he no longer had a fob for. 80 guests had scattered into the night carrying the story, and the story was already mutating into its final form, unkillable form. He didn't know. 7 years, and he didn't know. The texts began at 11:02 p.m. I have them all. They arrive in 4 distinct geological layers. Rage first. Lawyers, lawsuits, you humiliated me. Then bargaining. It was all a misunderstanding. Chloe meant nothing. She's not even that smart. Then the layer I'd honestly been waiting for, the recalculation, arriving around 2 a.m., when some friend of a friend finally showed him a business journal profile. "You're worth how much money? And you let me pay for half the utilities?" Then, at dawn, the grovel. Long paragraphs. He never stopped loving me. The penthouse could be ours. He'd always believed in me and my little, he actually caught himself mid-text, and rewrote it, my company. I replied once through Diane, with the forwarding address of the storage facility and the hours of operation. Weekdays, 9 to 5. He'd have to get up early. Another first. Chloe posted a tearful story about toxic energy and protecting her peace. Discovered that her engagement content now had a comment section of a shipwreck, and unfollowed him within the week. Influencers read metrics the way I read soil reports. His numbers were bad. She rebalanced her portfolio. The divorce will be short. The prenup my father's lawyers insisted on, the one Julian signed without reading, because reading, as established, was never his discipline, keeps the company, the trust, and every entity with my fingerprints on it exactly where they've always been. He gets what he brought. It fits in 2 suitcases and a duffel. I know the volume precisely. I've had it measured. And me, I'm writing this from the penthouse. PH-1 sits empty and quiet, and units like this take time to release properly. So some evenings I bring a folding chair and a beer up here after site visits, boots on, dust and all, and I sit at the floor-to-ceiling windows and look out at the skyline. I can see 9 of my buildings from this window. Julian looked at this exact view for 5 weeks and saw an aesthetic, a backdrop, something that looks like a life. He never once asked the only question that ever mattered in our marriage, the question any site foreman asks on day 1. Who built this? The lights are coming on across the city now, tower by tower, some of them mine. He wanted a woman with class. He was married to the woman with the deed.